economy. But there's one part of the economy that's taken the most dramatic drop of all. Back in the 1950s, Britain prided itself on being a nation of skilled workers who built things and sold them overseas. Clothes, cars, ocean liners, as important to our identity as our economy. Just look at this. Manufacturing was a massive 36% of our economy's output. So what's happened here? It's hard to believe, but this pastoral Derbyshire valley was once a hive of industry. It's the birthplace of British textile manufacturing, which led the Industrial Revolution, and in its time dominated the world. At its peak, industrial Britain supplied half the world's cotton cloth, 2/3 of its coal, half its iron, and an even greater proportion of its steel. Britain was the workshop of the world. It was a position we won at the beginning of the 19th century, and we held on as long as we could. We derived immense wealth from making things, lots of them, and selling them here at home and abroad. We made things like this, the fabric of this rather comfortable 50-year-old shirt. It says rather proudly behind the collar, "Woven in Great Britain." It's called Viyella, a sort of patented blend of wool and cotton. It was very popular in the Commonwealth and the USA because it represented quality and Britishness. And what happened to Viyella over the last century is a typical example of the fate of British manufacturing as a whole. The story starts here, where in the late 1800s, some Derbyshire spinners discovered that they could combine cotton and wool together into an integrated yarn. They named the blend Viyella after this mill and patented it in 1894. Viyella was the world's first brand name fabric.
The combination of weaves in here is remarkable. That were some of the biggest selling designs that Viyella's ever had since the 1960s.
Jim McConnell has been with Viyella for more than 40 years. He joined in the 1960s when he was still a teenager.
Viyella fabric is an intimate blend of 55% wool, 45% cotton. Because it's an intimate blend, it has wonderful colour definition that never really washes out. We had the wonderful strap line of "if it shrinks, we replace."
Viyella was sold round the world on the strength of its very British quality, a reputation that endured through the next century.
The biggest market was the USA without question, but the English look was what everyone really wanted. In the 1950s, huge range of plain colours. There's one colour here, red. I even remember the pattern number, A9129, that we used to sell 50,000 yards per shipment. That would make 25,000 shirts. Over the years, from the 19th century, they were employing 2,000 people at Plesley Vale. It was very much a society within a company.
Viyella grew to be an enormous corporation, merging 90 companies, employing 25,000 people across the UK. It concentrated the wool and cotton spinning business in 4 mills at Plesley Vale, a few miles down the road from the original mill. Hello, Tim.
Hi, Peter.
How do you do? How do you do? It's down here, is it?
Yeah.
Tim Rogers and most of his family worked for Viyella when it was running at full capacity. Now, how far back did your family work here?
My mother and father worked here in the 30s. More or less, they'd have come straight from school at 14 or 15 years of age. I started in 1959.
And how old were you when you began work
15.
here? 15. Tell us what it was like in its heyday back in the 60s and 70s.
The first thing would be 7:30 in the morning when 10 or 12 single-deck buses came in from the surrounding villages.
And did you sense that you were part of the factory that Britain was? I mean,
Well, yeah,
the workshop of the world.
It was, at that time, a lot of the technology here was as good as it got, really.
By the mid-60s, across the manufacturing sector, British firms amalgamated into large conglomerates. The hope was that companies would be more competitive if they were big. Viyella had become one of the 4 largest textile firms in Britain. Was it hard work?
Yes, it was, yeah.
But you were happy working here?
I think everybody seemed to be. There was a nice community spirit here. You've got canteen facilities within the mills, you've got a sports and social club, cricket matches, bowling greens, tennis courts, all on site, interdepartmental matches. It was a real family atmosphere and a good place to work.
But the workers at Plesley Vale faced an uncertain future. The harsh reality was that British manufacturers across the board faced stiff competition from overseas. No matter how efficient the production line, foreign products were invariably cheaper in the shops. Buy British campaigns in the 1970s were a last-ditch attempt to win back consumers. They had little effect. Overall, the textile industry was a major casualty of foreign competition. Firms just couldn't compete with cheap labour overseas. I told the story countless times during the 1980s. The Ford Motor Company is transferring production of its Sierra car from Dagenham to Genk in Belgium. Clark's is to close 2 factories in the West Country with the loss of workers in 2 of Northern Ireland's biggest companies about the future of their jobs. BAT is closing its Liverpool factory, more than 450 jobs. 500 jobs will be lost at the plant over 5 years. Peter Morgan now reports. Viyella managers decided that producing fabric in the UK was too expensive. They began to get it made offshore.
It was becoming increasingly difficult for us to compete against cheap imports. I could therefore see the industry just disappearing before my eyes, an industry that I really believed would be one of the industries of the UK. And within a very short period of time, it just disappeared, within a decade. It is always difficult to close factories. It's impossible to do it in a nice way. And there were many, many thousands of people who didn't have jobs.
Those mills and warehouses are now office space, mainly for service industries. Manufacturing as a whole now employs only 3 million people, less than a third of the workforce of 50 years ago. Those 3 million people actually churn out more stuff today than was produced in the 50s, but because Britain's economy as a whole is many times bigger than it was then, manufacturing's role has declined drastically. So just look at what's happened. 50 years ago, manufacturing was a massive 36%. Since then, as Britain's economy has grown to 3 times the size it was then, so manufacturing's share of our output has been squeezed to just 13%. So what on earth is going on in the rest of this trillion-pound economy? If the real expansion's not in those old traditional areas, where is it? A clue can be found in what happened next to Viyella. After the mills and factories were shut down, what remained was sold off piece by piece, leaving only the brand name, Viyella. Robert Kimpton is chairman of the company that bought it. Robert?
Peter, how do you do? Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Now, tell us, how does Viyella work today?
Well, now we're all about designing and creating the garments.
In this country?
In this country, and then we source the garments abroad. We license manufacturers to use our brand around the world. So
and that's all money for the British economy?
It is, yes. We have a network of licensees that include Japan, South Africa, America, Canada, all of whom are paying a fee to use the Viyella brand. Typically that's around about 8 to 10% of the sales value, and that's money that they pay us for using the intellectual property that we protect and the Viyella brand that we allow them to use.
But no matter where the clothes